What's up, everybody? It's LG Doucette here. You're listening to The First Mint, a podcast where I talk about NFTs and the world of Web3. The podcast comes out every Monday morning and occasionally on Wednesdays. If you like this content and you want some more, feel free to visit our Twitter page at The First Mint. Listen, guys, when I started to look into all this NFT stuff just over 2 years ago, there wasn't a lot of content to really digest. There wasn't tons of YouTube videos. There are only a few little Discords, including the Top Shot one, where you could actually go learn about this kind of stuff. And there were even fewer influencers or newsletters or First Mints or any of that kind of stuff. But there was one podcast, and it was named, and still is named, Zima Red, hosted by Andrew Steinwold. And it was through listening to that podcast that I learned basically most of the stuff that I know. Not everything, of course. I had to do a lot of my own research outside of listening to his pod, but in terms of how I viewed the space, its principles, its potential, and honestly, investment strategies, it came through Zima Red. And so it's quite natural for me to welcome Andrew onto today's podcast, from one podcaster to another. Now, he doesn't podcast as much as we do. He doesn't do it once a week. It's a little bit more infrequent, but that's because the core of what he does isn't a podcast. He actually runs his own investment firm, and I found out through interviewing him that he actually created the podcast not necessarily to try and educate people about NFTs. Of course, that's what it does. But he actually created it as a brand for his investment firm. He realized that nobody wanted to invest with him because they didn't know who he was. There was no outward-facing personality, and he realized that years ago. So he started a show where he could interview smart people. He had also been having trouble getting time with some of those smart people to talk to them about investing, but he found that in asking them to come onto the show for an hour led to a lot more yeses. And one of the most popular OG podcasts in the space, Zima Red, was born. Now, Andrew is somebody who definitely could have probably retired off of NFTs many times since he's been around in the space for 3 or 4 years, and you'll hear him talk about the old days, a lot of the NFT OG, the OG crew that you've heard about or you see as Twitter influencers all over the place. He knew them. He was in that small circle way back in the day. But he's not retired. He's still very heavily involved in the space, and that's because he is absolutely still now obsessed with crypto and NFTs. So obsessed, actually, that he and his wife named their cats Crypto and Kitty. And even on today's show, he admits that he doesn't really do anything else for fun. He mainly still just looks at NFTs. Andrew is one of my favorite thought leaders and content creators in the space. He says a lot of really smart stuff on Twitter and on his show, and I ask him about a variety of topics today, including, what trends he thought would be big in the space and aren't, such as metaverse land, what he thinks of Facebook, or now named Meta, and actually a surprising opinion from him, an unpopular one, that he's actually quite bullish on what they're doing, or rather he says he's softened on them. And then I get to the most important question, a question based on a tweet that he wrote a while back that really caught my eye and really got me thinking about how NFTs will be the biggest market in the world one day. And on today's show, in the second half, we dig into when that might happen, how it'll happen, and what it will include, as well as what are the roadblocks to getting there. So listen to my interview with Andrew Steinwold, the host of Zima Red, the podcast, the original podcast in the space, on The First Mint. Ladies and gentlemen of the First Mint, we have a very special treat for you today. The very first podcast I ever listened to in the space was Zima Red, and its host, its creator, and OG in the space, Andrew Steinwold, is with us today. Andrew, dude, I actually can't believe it took me this long to have you on the show, considering how many of your podcasts I've listened to, like while walking or commuting or at the gym or something like that. It's an honor to have you, man.
Thank you. I super appreciate that. And I think we connected I want to say it was, it's crypto, so who knows, but like a year and a half ago or maybe a year. I
Not
forget.
long after I started, I reaced out to you for
Okay.
advice, and I was like, "Dude, what am I doing? Like,
And I
help
was like, I
me!"
don't know. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So,
Oh, it's good. No, you gave me great advice. Told me to make just as much content as I could, and I kind of
smart.
followed that. But we're here to talk about you, man. We want to know about you. Everybody knows my story. Tell us, like, everybody wants to know the origin story. You probably do something similar on your show, but I think I want to know, and we all want to know. How did you get started in NFTs? But also like what motivated you to start the show? Because the Zima Red is still now like a staple in the space, despite there being thousands of new competitors that have come out since the new boom. Tell us that whole story.
yeah. Okay. Wow. So, got involved in Bitcoin in 2013. I thought it
Classic.
was really interesting. I read an article about the Silk Road, and so dove deep into Bitcoin then, and then thought Bitcoin was kind of a scam from 2014 after the market crash, of course. From 2014 to 2016, I was like, Bitcoin's dead. It's all over. It's kind of a scam. It wasn't until
What did
2016.
you do? Hold on. What did you do when you thought it was a scam? Did you have some and you sold it all?
Oh yeah, I sold everything in
You did.
2014.
Good.
At like the very
Good. All right.
bottom, like it was like the day. If you go on the chart, you look like it's like Andrew sold at the very bottom here, and so I was like, it's a scam. But during that 2014, 2016 period, I was like, blockchain, like Bitcoin's a scam. Blockchain's like for real, right? And was really obsessed with blockchain, not Bitcoin. And then 2016, I was like, you know what? Like I think that like Bitcoin actually makes a lot of sense. Like having a value that's not connected to a government, that's actually needed. And then digging deeper into these other tokens that had kind of come up. Because in 2014 I discovered Ripple, and I was obsessed with Ripple, which is funny. Like now I don't like Ripple, and but 2016 I was like, okay, Ethereum is pretty cool. Like you can like build like these decentralized apps, like that's exciting. And so I was like, some of these things make sense. So I started to jump back into the actual tokens, and then 2017 launched our crypto funds, and that did okay. We were beating the market, but compared to our competitors, we were underperforming them like vastly, right? So realize, okay, well, and there's a few reasons for that. But one of the reasons I attribute to was not having a brand. I think that we purposely try to be as low key as possible because we were so afraid of getting hacked. But what that does is that it makes you not visible to founders. And so if you're a startup that's trying to raise capital and you're trying to raise from Multicoin Capital or Pauling Nexus, which was our old fund, everyone's like, oh, Multicoin, we don't even know who these guys are. So I ended up realizing that, and also wanted to focus on a subsector of the market. We didn't want to be broad crypto because we thought we were already behind. In 2018, we're like, oh, it's already over. Like we're so far behind, like it's done. And so we're like, okay, we need to find a niche within crypto and become the experts there. So 2019 rolls around, and this is actually due to my wife. She was paying me for a long time, saying, hey, you need to dive deeper into NFTs. We both bought CryptoKitties in 2017, and I thought it was like cute and cool and interesting, but she was like, no, there's something really big here, and because she's been making crypto themed paintings since 2017, and so NFTs for her was, she's like, oh my gosh, I can like turn my paintings into NFTs and whatnot, and so it wasn't until February of 2019 I ended up going with her to NFT NYC, which at the time there was like probably 250 people there, and I was like talking to everyone trying to figure out what's going on, and spoke to one individual. His name is Jin, or he goes by like Dank VR. I actually still don't know his real name. I've known him for years. He's an awesome guy, and he basically explained to me all about the metaverse, and I had concepts of the metaverse and like how crypto and NFTs fit in. But he basically pieced it all together. He's like, listen, the metaverse is now possible due to this ownership layer, due to NFTs, due to blockchain, becoming a thing now. And that to me, I felt like it was my aha moment. I was like, oh my God, like this is incredible. I happen to be in the right time, right place, right skill set to, kind of dive into this trend. Because I always thought crypto was building up to something bigger, but it was just kind of, I was like, oh, it's going to transform the financial system. But then with, the concept of the metaverse and NFTs, I was like, oh no, this is going to transform society. Like people are going to be able to, own their digital stuff and kind of
Right.
really spend more time, money, and effort into their digital lives than they already do. So, anyhow, launched Sophermion, which is the NFT fund that I currently operate today, and that was in September 2019. October 2019, launched Zima Red. So a month after, I was like, okay, not learning from my mistakes, need to build a brand and really get out there and be visible and talk to founders, and that was the objective solely, was to build a brand, and so I could get more deal flow. What ended up happening though was I became obsessed. I was like, I get to talk. It's like a cheat code. I get to talk to insanely smart people for an hour and just ping them randomly on Twitter, like, hey, my name's Andrew, I have this podcast, want to talk to you, and like if you just say, hey, can I get an hour of your time to anyone who's busy or like smart, they're gonna be like, no. If you say, hey, can I get an hour of your time and we're gonna record it, they're like, absolutely, like for sure. So that was great, and really fell in love with kind of like learning from people, that whole process, and did a little bit of a newsletter as well, just talking about random ideas and events and whatnot. So anywho, yeah, fast forward today. Sophermion is going well. Zima Red, still love it. I haven't posted in a little bit though, a little delayed there, but no, I'm still obsessed.
Dude, it's fine, man. Because Zima Red still has some classic episodes that I refer people back to.
Wow.
And it's just like it's. I think there's especially it's even some of the older ones are like a time capsule to like before the boom, which to me is such an important time. Even like what you're discussing, like when your partner was telling you to get into NFTs. And you guys are buying crypto kitties, and like that's like such like when the seeds were truly planted. Even if things have changed drastically, I feel like that's such an important time of like the true OGs like shaping what became now. Tell me about like the classic episode to me that I listened to is a two-parter that really like clicked for me, and just like I'm telling you that your podcast gave me the similar moment that you had. When you were saying you're at NFT NYC and that person was telling you about the metaverse and you were like, okay, I get it now, it's going to transform society. What did that for me was listening to you chat with Pransky. And I think it was like the fall of 2020. I just got a Top Shot account. I'd spent like $20 and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I want to spend more money, but it's like pandemic and funds are low. Like what the hell's going on? And I remember I was sitting there at a coffee shop outdoors, which is the only thing you were like allowed to do during the pandemic, and listening to you chat with Pransky, and just for it like really clicking for me of like what this was, and also listening, to be honest, how Pransky had made millions of dollars doing all this like really degen shit, like waiting up at night for like the whales to come online to sell them like Star Trek NFTs and like all this like wild shit that I was like, oh shit, like if you there's so much more here. Tell me about your tell me more about the podcast and even like your own discovery through the show, and also maybe what Zima has meant to other people, because I'm sure you've gotten that feedback a lot.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so I think, the episode you're referring to is with Pransky, and unfortunately I had to take it down.
It's gone.
It's gone, yeah. But it's still like floating
What?
on the internet. People still share it, but unfortunately I had to take it down because Pransky values his privacy. And I've been friends with him for forever.
Got it.
He said, hey, I'm trying to stay more anon. Do you mind? I said, no problem at all. Even though it was like my top episode, I was like, no.
That was amazing. You gotta like transcribe it and put it into a blog post so we can at least read it. Like we need, and then just take out any parts that like refer to their personal lives or something. We need the knowledge in that one, man. We gotta get that back. Or you know what? How about this? You and I can we'll redo the podcast word for word, and I'll play Pransky.
Done.
And we'll just take out any personal info. We'll just record it as though it's 3 years ago. Or 2 years ago.
That would be amazing. That would actually be amazing. So I think that just the podcast itself, I think, has been incredible. Again, learnings for myself, getting to know people on a deeper level versus just a regular conversation like a coffee shop, and being able to not only learn about their personal lives but also dive into what makes them tick, like how are they able to accomplish these things, their strategies, and in terms of building a business, in terms of trading, in terms of investing, like who knows what. It's been like incredible. And a lot of people have said like, oh yeah, I listened to your podcast and that was a great kind of first entryway into this space, which to me is like incredible. If we can get more people excited about what I'm excited about, then obviously I'm like very, very, a huge fan of that. I think it's been the most, probably value additive activity in terms of learnings, in terms of knowledge, in terms of friendships that I've done ever, I think. How do you feel about your podcast? Is that kind of a similar sentiment?
It's mixed feelings sometimes, man, because we put out a weekly show, and for a while I did like there was a couple weeks where I did a daily Top Shot show, which was a grind. And then we're doing 2 shows a week for a while, or 3 shows a week, which was also hard. And now it's even just once a week, and we do a lot more at the first minute. But, sometimes it's easy, and I get to have great conversations with people like you, where the conversation flows, and I'm like, immediately there's going to be tons of great nuggets of information for people to really latch onto. And other times, honestly, it's like Sunday afternoon, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck podcast is going to be tomorrow, and I just like make something up, and I like have nightmares about people being like, that was the worst bullshit podcast I've ever heard. And the next morning, tweets are being like, "Man, LG, I loved what you said." I'm like, "Okay, fuck, I don't know what to think anymore." So I don't know. It's being a creator, even just putting out an hour show every week is you still have that kind of push and pull relationship with it.
Totally. Yeah. No.
It's not
I think luckily for me, I'm kind of sparing in the episodes. I kind of kind of dive deeper when I want to, or like for example, now I haven't posted in like 3 weeks, right? But if you are kind of set to a schedule of one per week, like even one per week, when I hear that, I'm like, oh my god, like that's a lot. Daily, I would my mind, my head would explode. So that's incredible.
Did you ever think, Andrew, because right now I'd say like probably the hottest like audio format in the NFT space or even crypto space is like a daily Twitter Spaces, right? Because you've got like Rug Radio, you got the show with Pio and Nick. There's plenty of others like Coffee with Captain. There's loads. Like you just log into Twitter and see Spaces, and even when you and I started our shows way back, there was no Twitter Spaces. There wasn't even Clubhouse, right? So do you have any feelings there in terms of like that being the way that people now consume content in NFTs? Because I'd assume that it's like even when you started, 200 people at NFT NYC, like there's not enough demand there for you to do like a daily radio show, right? And probably not enough happening in NFTs. But now there's so much happening in NFTs that you have space for multiple creators and multiple buckets of communities and audience to do all this different audio, right? Or even just all this different content. There's a million newsletters, influencers, everything. How do you feel as a creator? Like how do you feel about the amount of content, how much that the broadcast has kind of changed in the space?
Yeah, I'm super fortunate again because creating content's my second objective, while my first objective is my firm and really investing. And so what I'm doing with the podcast and also newsletter to an extent, but podcast really is optimizing for myself. I'm saying like, who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to learn from? And I don't chase after people with big followings or whatever. If there's a person with 100 followers and they happen to write some really interesting tweets that I want to learn more about, or I know about them from this person or whatever, I'm just like, hey, like you want to come on the pod? And that's again, I love that because I'm not targeting masses and eyeballs. I just happen to have conversations with amazing people, record it, and then if people like it, awesome. If not, then it doesn't bother me.
Tell me about the relationships you have in the space and how they've changed. Because again, I'll relate it back to 2 years ago. I came into NFTs. I listened to your show. I poked around and I was like, okay, I can kind of see who the voices are here. There's a few dozen of them in terms of like the bigger voices. People have been around for a while. They have their followers like a couple thousand. Now some of those people have 250,000 followers and they've moved on to other different projects or they've just expanded. Some are still doing the same thing. Tell me about how your the relationships you've formed and how those have evolved during this like massive boom we had starting in 2021.
Yeah. So I would say, okay, so when I first entered the space, I was unbelievably lucky to be welcomed into a Discord chat room. It was Pransky, Jimmy from Nameless. It was Carlini. It was Nate Alex. It was Work Kitty. It was Poopy from Doodles. It was Alan Falcon from Dapper. So it was just like all these insane people in like this small group of like 20, and I didn't know anything. Like they were the OGs. Like they were in since like 2018, 2017 full time, and I felt like I was like the new guy, which was amazing that I could learn from these people, and I would be in there daily, talking to them daily, and I mean, so that was just, I couldn't ask for a better group of teachers. That was incredible. And then moving forward, unfortunately, I got more busy. And so I couldn't, I haven't been in that chat group, and I don't, 6 months or something like that, which is sad. And I hope everyone's doing well, which I'm sure they are. But like, yeah. So what's sad is that like I don't have the daily contact that I did, because I can consider those people my friends. But what's great is that my business is doing well, and so it's kind of like I sadly don't have enough time to kind of be in those discords all day chatting with my friends, but I absolutely love that. Like, it's incredible to be able to have those connections with people that you've never actually met in real life, many of them, and actually feel like you're friends, and truly I consider them friends. So that's like a really crazy thing that I never knew going into the space. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to make friends. Like, I was like, no, this is like a exciting market that I think we can invest in. And I'd come out of it, I'm like, oh, I've made 100 friends. Like, this is amazing.
Who's your best friend?
Josie, my wife, is my best friend.
No, no real life. No, like in the internet. Internet best friend. That's very nice, Andrew. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's the right answer. I will say right away that is the correct answer. That is the correct answer. But I'm looking for no. I mean, like in that, whether it's that group or even now, who is like, who would you consider like your closest peer? Or even if you don't want to reveal that or whatever that is, you can change the question to, who do you consider like some of the most important people in the space or the best creators or something like that? Just tell us some notable people that you think are important, either to you or in general or both.
Yeah, I mean, everyone I named that group are incredible, extremely nice, teachers and everything like that. But I also really love Jin, the person who taught me about, really, really explained to me in detail the metaverse and what it means and what it's capable of, etc. Jin, Dank VR, etc. He's been amazing. I can reach out to him anytime and set up a phone call with him and say, hey, like, tell me what's going on in the metaverse, right? And he can tell me all about what technologies he's working on, what he's building, what other people are working on and building, and what are the issues that he sees, what are the strengths that people are building today, and that's like a unbelievably, it's really generous of him to be able to just respond to me whenever, and tell me his knowledge, but yeah, I'd say it's those people, those people in my chat group and Jin and whatnot. Those are who I consider my friends and teachers mainly, but also friends.
Andrew, you've been around for a while, and we chatted a little bit about this before we actually started recording. You were buying art and CryptoKitties 4 or 5 years ago, and now things have exploded. We're in like the first like I guess kind of bear market in a way, although you've gone through it before, but this is where it's scaled now. Is there anything from the past, like any trends that you thought would come to light in NFTs that just never happened, or that it was like, this will be the thing and it just hasn't become the thing? Like, has there been any assumptions you had that just never came true? Because I've got a few on my end that it was like, when I started NFTs, I was like, shit, this is going to be huge, just wait. And I'd tell people about it. They'd be like, I don't care, and it's just, it never became a thing. I'd love to hear that from you. If you have any examples of that or anything that you were kind of really keen on and that you're still waiting for that to become. And it doesn't have to be an investment standpoint. It doesn't have to be like NFTs you hold because you think they'll be big one day, but maybe more on the trend side. And I'll give a little bit of context for this as well while you think about your answer, is that for me personally, like when I started in the space, like a PFP, a profile photo, wasn't a thing at all, right? Like the people who had punks had changed their profile photos. And then Jimmy and them had kind of recreated that a little bit with Avastars and made it, kind of a generative art project, which was cool. And that was about it. But it was like, if you didn't have either of those, or you didn't want to do that, you just had your normal photo of you, which is like whatever you'd used on social media for like 15 years, which is like you with your dog, or like you on top of a mountain, or like some silly thing if you don't want to show your face. You know what I mean? Like people just use their profile photos as like their normal photo. And then when Bored Apes came along, so did the boom of changing your photo. And that's something that really surprised me. And for a while I was like, this can't last. But now like that is like come to define NFTs almost as like some kind of cartoon that you use as your portable online identity. And it's just an aspect to NFTs that I never really considered to be important, and that the market and the community taught me was important, and that I had to accept was going to be very important. That's in my experience of being here for 24 months. You've been here twice as long as that, not more. Is there anything else like that that's happened?
Yeah, I thought that virtual worlds, blockchain-based virtual worlds, would be more popular. Even though we are in like what I call like the pre-Napster era, like we don't even have Napster yet, and after that will be like iTunes, and after that will be like Spotify, right? So like we're super early there.
Yeah.
But I figured that people are spending most of their waking hours staring at screens today. And it's like 7.5 hours for the average American. For Filipinos, who I think are in number one spot in the world, I think they're at like 10 plus hours per day. And so we're already spending most of our lives digitally. And I figured, okay, blockchain-based virtual worlds are just like next generation social media. Your piece of land that you buy is kind of like your profile, and you're putting pictures of yourself if you want. You're putting a e-commerce store, like you're selling NFT shoes or whatever, or you're building a gallery showing off your stuff. And I figured that would be more popular. But I've also learned so much in terms of user experience. Like users want the easiest experience possible, and walking through a virtual world and looking at things is just harder than looking at a screen. Like if I go on Instagram, I'm getting just the pure information, versus if I'm on, if I'm walking through a virtual world. And that's why I think that wallets, like I think that wallets are the next generation Instagram and Facebook, because I go on to people's OpenSea profiles and I'll kind of scroll through. Oh, what do they have? What's cool? What's exciting? So I thought that blockchain-based virtual worlds would have taken off in a larger way by now. I do think that they will take off or be more important in the future once we have better VR and AR devices. That's going to take some years because it's more reliant on hardware versus software. Because software can iterate at a pace that's just like unmatched. Hardware is going to take some years. Very bullish still, but it's going to take much longer than I expected. PFPs, I had no idea that PFPs were going to be a thing. And what I've learned about being in this space is that the market is driven by narratives, and you cannot predict those narratives. I think it's nearly impossible to predict unless you are scraping like tons of social information and whatnot. Maybe you could like just tell right before a narrative kind of comes on. But that's a very kind of quantitative process that would require like a ton of work to figure that out. But yeah, I had no idea. Like I even I was telling people about when apes first came out. They're like, oh, what do you think about apes? I was like, it's just like another one of these projects. Like, it's just like hash masks, right? I was like really big on hash masks. I was just like nothing. But they had some incredible marketing on the back end, which really propelled them. Which I didn't even. That was like, even that in hindsight, simple strategy. Get these in the hands of famous people. But back then that was considered like a play that no one even had thought of, right? So yeah.
I just want to touch on the virtual worlds for a second, and what I like that you do, and it's something that I aspire to do and try and do as well, is talk about like the bigger like Web2 platforms and brands and how they're going to bridge that gap. I need your straight up honest opinion on what Facebook is doing.
So okay, it's funny because I used to be like, I still kind of am, but I used to be hardcore. I was like, Facebook is the devil. It's the worst. It's terrible. Which I don't trust it as a company, right? I don't trust it as a company. I think the leadership is untrustworthy broadly. But my views have softened, which is crazy. Pretty crazy for me to say, considering I was like hardcore before. I think that we're going to need the masses. Like we need normal people to adopt this technology and to like it and to not view it as something like evil and bad. Because broadly, it is a force for good in the world. Like if you can, right now, our internet is structured in a way where it's like communist. Like we do not own anything, and we are simply like worker bees. And all the effort that we put into adding value to Facebook, adding value to Twitter, adding value to Google, we as users don't get any of that. Like there's zero upside. We are simply like we are the product. So, and the metaverse, the Web3 internet, that to me represents the pathway to a capitalistic internet. Which even capitalism now is kind of has a bad term, but you can argue that people want to live in a society where if they put time, money, and effort into something, they can actually grow that value, or at least they're getting something out of it, right? And that to me is where the Web3 metaverse internet kind of that's what it represents to me. And I think that Facebook, before I was really against them, and now I'm like, you know what? We should learn how to play. We should learn how to kind of form. I don't want to say alliances, but we should learn how to play nice, right? I think that they're a necessary portion or a necessary entity that we need to get on board, and I hope that they are. It sounds like they're making some inroads, but I hope that they have similar values in terms of, hey, let's give our users more power and more ownership and more, just kind of control over their digital lives. And I hope that they're going down that path. It sounds like they want to, but whether or not they actually, whether or not that's just marketing, like, we'll see. But I used to be like very against corporates, and now I'm like, you know what? I'm still Web3 native diehard. Like I want to back them fully, but I think that we need to kind of grow together. Because if we stay this niche of just Web3 hardcore people like maxis, like how I was, it's gonna be really difficult over the coming decade to get everyone onboarded.
Do you think we have that vibe right now in NFTs?
The vibe of
being maxis.
Yeah, it's a good question. Broadly, I think that, well, it's interesting because it depends on what cohort you're in, right? I was a 2019 cohort to NFTs. The 2020 cohort was different. The 2018 cohort was also very different. The 2021 cohort is like the most mainstream we've gotten, and it's like regular people, regular users broadly, and they don't have the baggage of hardcore crypto users, right? Because I'm a big Bitcoiner, big decentralization guy, and the 2021 NFT user is not like that. Like they're like, no, I just want to I want to gamble, I want to play games, I want to socialize, I want to, it's like normal human stuff, right? So
they make life-changing money and then they put it right back into the market.
Yeah, I love it. It's great. Yeah, so yeah, it varies. Like I don't have a good answer for you because the answer is like it depends.
Do you think I think it varies a lot. I guess maybe a better question for you, or kind of an evolution from that question, is do you think, thinking about the next wave of adoption, right? And you're talking about like Facebook, right? And hopefully Facebook makes some good decisions there. And even a lot of stuff we cover, we try and cover more of like the adoption stuff, which is also why we kind of stick to the, obviously we naturally talk a lot about Dapper stuff, but also Flow is making inroads, right? Like even yesterday, we're recording this on September 1st right now, the Ticketmaster news came out that it's like, okay, like Ticketmaster has already done a test with Flow and they've made 5 million ticket NFTs. It's like, that's huge, right? And there's clearly a lot being built towards adoption. There's a lot of money being invested towards bigger platforms and more adoption. News comes out every day, like the CEO of MasterCard saying all 90 million locations of MasterCard are going to take crypto soon. All this great news. Do you think then that when those people that come into crypto through that, how is like that class going to change it? And what is going to stay from currently right now? It's a really convoluted question. I'm trying to look towards the future, but just thinking, it's like you're talking about the class of 2021 has a certain vibe to it. Let's say the next wave of adoption happens at the start of 2024. Like that new wave of 2024, are they gonna come in and buy the same stuff that we have now? Are they gonna come in and like the same stuff? Like, or are they gonna come up with a whole new trend? Like, like right now, like even you and I were saying, like PFPs didn't think that'd be a thing. Is the class of 2024 going to come in with some other freaking thing in NFTs that they're like, we don't give a shit about your PFPs. We're doing this. You know what I mean? Like, what is that? Is that like what we're talking about? Like, is there like the current market in 2 years is only going to be 5% of the new market? And how's that going to change? It's a really open question, but I know this is something you think about a lot as well. So we'd love to hear your kind of broad future thoughts there.
No, it's an awesome question. I strongly believe that the next cohort will be radically different in terms of like they'll be like more normal. So like which is great. Like we're slowly getting like to regular people, right? So that's in terms of like their usage of products, their wants, their needs, their desires. But in terms of the actual assets that people are wanting to buy, sell, trade, etc. Yeah, it's going to be totally different, right? Because like back in 2019, those assets were different than 2020. Actually, they were like kind of the same. It was like the same like 20 projects. And then 2021, again, we mentioned PFPs weren't even a thing. That became totally different. And the 2024 cohort are going to be totally different. And there'll be a small percentage of projects that survive and stay relevant within over the coming years. But yeah, it's going to be exactly as you said. We're going to have whatever like the new PFP thing is. It's going to be like TFT or like some random thing. And that'll be like the future, and everyone's talking about that for a while, and everyone will be really excited and saying, oh, and what people do is they build narratives based off of the trading volume. So if the trading volume is high on something, they develop a narrative around that. So I remember like there's been like a couple art boom and bust cycles. There's been a couple virtual land boom and bust cycles. There's been PFP boom and bust cycles now. But like whenever that happens, whenever the volume goes up, people craft a story around it. It's like, oh, well, the art volume is high because, people now love digital art and it's the future and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like they just make the story. And when virtual land was really hot, this is back in what I think it was it fall of 2020. People were saying, oh, Facebook, metaverse, like just like the metaverse is the future. And like virtual land just was having a huge boom like everywhere. And so, it's funny how that happens, but I think it's probably most markets. I would assume is I only kind of really pay attention to the NFT markets and kind of crypto markets, but I would assume that most markets are or a lot of them are narrative driven. 2024 it's going to be something totally different. We have no idea what it is today. A small percentage of the assets that are relevant today will survive.
You said earlier that it's hard to predict. I like this line. I feel like you have a lot of great one-liners, Andrew. We're eventually going to whittle down to the one that caused this show to happen. You said that markets, it's hard to predict markets, the narrative that markets will come up with, or something like that. You said something to that effect, that basically the hardest part of this business is to try and predict what kind of new narrative the market will craft. And even the last point you just made is a good example of that, right? How are narratives made? You know what I mean? Like, expand on that, I guess. That it's just like, you're telling me that it's like certain volume will cause something to happen. I've been on this tangent recently, we're like a week or two out from the merge, that it's just like, what is the narrative for Ethereum after that, right? So it's like, I share the similar viewpoint that it's like the narrative is very important. But tell me more there, like expand that for me. Like, and this is, again, thinking about our community, it's like, that's something I think we're all looking to really understand and get as much feedback as we can on. And again, not financial advice, but like essentially like, how are markets made exactly in this space, and who and how are those narratives developed?
Wow. Okay. I guess short answer is I don't know. Like I don't know how the narratives are created or memed into existence. It's almost like there's that funny meme. It's like about markets in general, and it shows like all these guys in suits, and at one end it's like a guy says like bye. He's like waving to someone as like goodbye, and then someone is like, oh wait, he said bye, like oh bye. And then everyone starts buying, and then like the middle of the page, someone says like, "See you later," or I don't really get it, but it's like "see ya," and then someone's like, "Wait, sell," and like everyone's like, "Sell." So and that kind of same awesome behavior is amplified, massively on the internet, and the fact that we are all in one location on the internet, we are all on Twitter, right? And not only that, but we all follow each other on Twitter. So it's like all these people all in the world are all on this one social media platform, and we all follow each other. And so right when someone, with 100,000 followers or whatever says something interesting about, I think writes a long thread about the future of art is the digital art and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, oh my God, art is the future. I agree. And then we go on a podcast, we talk about that thread, and like, it's just like this. So I always think about that. So I don't know how the narratives are actually made. And sorry, the second part of your question, the first part, it was like, how are the narratives actually created and decided? And what was the second part?
How can we I guess it was more like just how can we predict them, or how can we kind of track them? It's just like, again, as like I consider still myself to be like an average collector, very average investor. You know what I mean? Like I'm not managing big funds as much as I've been very fortunate to turn this into my job. I still feel very pedestrian when it comes to like, in the context of the NFT market, not compared to normal people. You know what I mean? It's just like, and I very much look for that narrative. I think narrative matters a lot, so I agree with you. But where I struggle is to think about like, okay, again, like merge is going to happen. And then what? Like, is all this liquidity waiting on the side to buy NFTs? And then what are people going to say? Is it like, oh, the merge happened, nothing changed the ETH price? You know what I mean? Like, just trying to think, like, I try and think of narrative, like, okay, in 6 months, what are we saying? If the price of ETH and nothing's really changed, we're still stagnant. What's the new thing? And it's so hard to either like identify those as they happen or even predict them. And I'm looking for you to tell me how to do that.
Yeah. So no, it's
impossible.
It's a super good question. So we we've always deployed capital. Basically, essentially what we do is we do our homework, we read, we talk to people, we research different projects, different things, and we develop a thesis as to why we like a certain asset or why we like a certain company or a certain product or whatever, and we'll deploy capital, and then we just sit on it. We're not trying to trade. We're not trying to say, okay, we're going to go short, pre-merge, and then post-merge we're going to go long or whatever. We're not traders. We are trying to do our homework and really just buy and hold. We're not trying to get fancy, because back in 2017 when we had our crypto fund, which is a liquid crypto asset fund, we were trading, and unless you're a trader, like you worked at like a Jane Street or like a Jump or like a DRW, then like you're not going to outcompete those guys, and the amount of data and the amount of information they have is just astronomical. And so what wasn't our skill set, wasn't my skill set. So I feel like our skill set is just really understanding the market, but not necessarily understanding what the next narrative will be. If some new narrative is being talked about, we don't want to, let's say PFPs are like all the rage. We don't necessarily want to go chase after that, right? Ideally, we're already involved in some things like that, and we can scale up the size. But we're not trying to say, okay, we're like 50% sure, or 51% sure that digital art is going to be the next narrative. Therefore, let's start acquiring a ton right now. It doesn't really work like that with us. It's really just based off of homework, essentially. And in terms of the merge, I just want to kind of briefly touch upon this. It was interesting to me when, I posted, like, people got mad at me. I posted on Twitter, I was like, why are people, they say that Ethereum is going to go up a lot with the merge. And I'm like, guys, like, we're in the middle of the first bear market in crypto's history. We've had like 15 years of like the best bull run in all of United States history, all the world's history, and now we are in entering this very, what I think is going to be a very bad bear market, and people are like, oh yeah, the merge. I'm like, guys, Ethereum is like a x amount of 100 million, this many hundreds of $1 million asset class, right? Like we're talking in the correlation to macro, like traditional markets is 0.99, right? So I'm like, it doesn't matter. You could have the most Vitalik could come out and say, hey guys, like we're going to combine Bitcoin and Ethereum together, like, or some crazy thing. And it's, we see a bump, but it's not going to go like 10,000, right? So, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm going to eat my words, and maybe the merge is like the bee's knees and going to become like Ethereum's going to go to $100,000 per ETH. Who knows? But I just think that there's like much wider forces at play, and you just have to, kind of be aware of that.
Now to the meat of what I wanted to ask you, Andrew. You tweeted a while back, and I love again this kind of thought. You said that one day NFTs will be the biggest market in the world. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay. So what's really exciting about NFTs is that they are expanding existing markets and they are creating entirely new markets. So the expansion, it's almost like this unlock of liquidity that is on the internet. So, there's 4.8 billion internet users today, and they don't own any of their stuff. But suddenly, with a flick of a switch, we just basically said, hey, you guys now have property rights, and you guys now have the ability to turn any single digital good into a tradable asset. Like that to me is like, oh my god! Like it's like I guess fall of the Berlin Wall is not a good example because I guess kind of. When that fell, Russia was then open for markets, right, and free trade, and you could argue that GDP per capita increased and people were better off. In some instances they were, some they were not.
Multiple new places were open for business, 12 or 13 new countries were created overnight, and
totally
like many new markets were made. Yeah, it's a stretch, but it's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, the better one I would say is probably China. So like China was communist, like more what we consider communist today. I mean, sorry, but like the actual what it actually stands for. And in 1982, they're like, hey, communism's not really working. Let's try some capitalism. So basically, they in 1982 they enabled their citizens to engage in commerce. They're saying, hey, you guys can now own property. You guys can now start businesses. You guys can now do all these different things. And if you look at a graph from 1982, China's growth till today, 40 years, it's been like the most insane growth in all of human history. economically, right? They used more concrete, like I think it's like per year than like all of like America combined, or I forget what it is, right? But hundreds of millions out of poverty, GDP per capita up like I think it's like 10x or something like that, something outrageous, and that was with 1.2 billion people, right? And that was with a financial system that was anything but seamless. Okay, so that the Chinese financial system has some issues and it's wires and whatnot. It's like traditional. What we just did is we just gave 4.8 billion people access to property rights, the ability to engage in commerce, and they're using a financial system that is seamless and global. So we're talking about China and the Chinese financial system. Now we're talking about no. You can be in Argentina, you can be in Norway, you can be in Kenya. It doesn't matter. You can now engage in this truly global economy all through NFTs, and you're trading on blockchain-based rails, like this blockchain-based financial system. So that to me, I was like, oh my god, 4.8 billion people are the ability to create and engage in commerce. They're going to the amount of value that's going to be created over the next 40 years is going to make China look like nothing. The amount of value that's going to be created in the next 40 years is going to make the internet growth look minuscule, right? It's going to absolutely blow everything out of the water that we've seen. And we see this on certain occasions in terms of like in certain games, certain platforms that really take off. Either the token goes up a lot because everyone piles in and people are so excited, or the engagement that we're seeing per game is orders of multitude higher versus engagement in Web 2 games. Like we're just seeing people are more incentivized to spend more time, money, and effort into their digital lives when they have that sense of ownership. And so that's that's setting up the macro. In terms of why it's going to be the next, the world's biggest market, is because, right now it's small. We're talking about arts, we're talking about collectibles, we're talking about video games. It's very, very tiny. And these are all low stakes use cases that are fun, friendly, approachable, and really kind of allowing us to build out this infrastructure for when we put in, or when we bring in like real, quote unquote, real assets, right? Loans, IP, financial contracts, derivative contracts, all sorts of traditional financial assets will be traded on chain as NFTs, because in a lot of instances you get massive efficiency gains for trading assets on chain versus how they're traded today. Like I always use this example. It's kind of overdone, but when I bought my condo in Chicago, I had to go down to the property title office. I had to sign all these papers, handwritten. Yeah. It was like a huge stack with a pen and paper. And then when it was done, they're like, okay, cool. Like you now own your condo, right? And if they're handing me this thing, and I'm like, that's a process. Like it's 2021, like, and so yeah, like that to me was crazy. And yeah, some cities have gone digital, which is great. But like going digital is one, but having the actual title of that home or of that asset, car or whatever, actually being transferred to LG, and then LG transferring the funds to me. That could be done with way less people, it can be done in minutes versus this process took X amount of weeks, and the papers and legal and all that could be baked into a smart contract and just be ultra efficient and I think that would be, I think that's going to happen. It's going to take a very long time. I'd say at least 20 for stuff like that. It's probably like 10, 20 years. But like it will, like the efficiency gains you get, if it was like a 1x 2x improvement, it maybe it wouldn't happen for much longer. But we're talking about like no, we are making things way. We're talking about cutting out months and months of work, and tons of people that don't actually need to be there, and tons of processes that are irrelevant. You're talking about cutting all that down in 2 minutes.
What do you see as like the biggest roadblock to that? Because I love that it's a beautiful vision, and honestly, like anybody here who's ever needed to do any of the processes you described definitely is nodding their head as is like, yes, that would be great, but like any major shift, there'll be resistance in different areas. What are some of the biggest areas? What are the biggest roadblocks to something like that?
Entrenched entities. So there's a lot of people right now that are they set up the system back in the day, and it's working for them great. And I'm not saying our system's terrible, right? It's functional, it's fine. But what I'm saying is it can be radically improved by like orders of magnitude. But like, the people that set up these systems or that have integrated themselves into the system, they're obviously they're making money. So like a new basically if we're saying, hey, we're gonna create a better technology that's gonna like probably replace your job, they're gonna say, hell no, like no way. Like I want to, like obviously not. Like why would I accept that, right? So, and this is true for like like most innovation and even like science, like I didn't realize this was true for science and like medical discoveries and all sorts of stuff. Like people are like, the meme is that innovation happens, at least this is in science and medical, innovation happens every death at a time or something like that. Like once a scientist dies, then like people can say like, he's like, okay, dinosaurs were, died off in the year 10,000 or whatever. I'm just making stuff. Dinosaurs died off in this year. Once that guy guy or gal who made that kind of statement and everyone kind of believes it dies, then only can people start kind of looking into it. Actually, like dinosaurs really died off like this long ago or whatever, right? And that's for science and medical. Like that's like for not stuff where people have that much money on the line. I mean, there is money on the line, but for business, it's way worse. People are like, no, I do not want to innovate here because I will literally lose my job, which is understandable. But so I think it's going to take some time. It's going to really, the only way that I see innovation happening, at least in the States, is where people are making money. So it's like, can you get the people that you're trying to innovate out of, or can you get the politicians to have some sort of system where they're adding value to their own pockets, right? I'm not talking about in terms of like bribery or anything crazy like that. I'm talking about in terms of okay, we're going to get rid of this process and get rid of these people's jobs, but we're going to replace it with this, and they'll be in charge of this new process, etc. So yeah, it's going to take some time for sure.
What are all those people going to do with their jobs when they don't have jobs anymore?
Yeah,
trade NFTs. Do play to earn games? Play Axie?
Exactly. Yeah. They'll be playing Axie. They'll be flipping crypto dick butts for sure. It's going to be what we're all doing, right?
What we're all doing that we pretend is work. Exactly. But it's actually here's a real question. These are all real questions. And I know we're short on time, so we'll wrap this up soon. And I do want to talk really quick about your investing firm as well. How do you honestly like from one like person who works in the space to another? I always ask people this: is like, how do you manage like actually like wanting to like look and buy at NFTs and then also trying to do your job? Because to me, it's like I've always likened this to being like working in NFTs is like working at freaking Pizza Hut, where you're like and being a pizza addict at the same time, where you're like, I have to make X amount of pizzas every day. And then when you go home, you're like, I'm going to order some pizza now. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, this is kind of like this circular thing where it's like, for people who still have non-crypto jobs, it's like, great. Like you get to go to work and do your thing. And then when you go home or in your bathroom breaks, you get to look at NFTs, and NFTs is like the release. It's the fun you get in community. But for me, it's like, it's both. So it's kind of fucks me up sometimes, honestly. Where I have to like manufacture not crypto stuff, and how do you manage that?
Okay, so the question is, how do I manage not buying NFTs personally?
How do you like? No, you can buy as many as you like, but has that ever been a conflict? Like, do you find that crypto is all consuming for you at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I'm obsessed. Like I'm literally obsessed. Like,
it's a good thing. You see it as a good thing to be obsessed.
My God.
Like,
yeah,
good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I don't have a life. My friends, they make fun of me all the time because I don't go out. And these are my friends from pre-crypto.
Yeah.
I don't go out. And if I do go out on the rare occasions, they can walk up to me and I'll be talking. Whoever I'm talking to at whatever party we're at, I will be talking to them about crypto, right?
Yeah, you're talking.
And but I mean, my wife, she's been involved in the space since 2017. Like, nice. Our cats are named Crypto and Kitty. Like so it's like we are like cringy deep.
Are you fucking serious?
Yes. Crypto and Kitty.
God. Oh my God, man, that is severe dedication. Real quick, Andrew, tell me. You hinted at it many times. Tell me about Sophermion. Tell me about your investment firm, what you guys do there, and if you guys have survived in the bear market.
Yes. So we invest. We have two different funds. One fund is investing directly into NFT assets, and the other fund is investing into venture capital, investing into pre-seed, seed, sometimes Series A startups. Earlier the better, and anything to do with NFTs. So it can be financial infrastructure, social, experiential, gaming, etc. We're pretty broad based on the venture fund, and yeah, again, I'm obsessed with it. Like it's all I do and think about. But what I also love is having this multi-stage approach, because we're not just venture investors, I actually don't consider myself a VC, which I know is like kind of cringe because I guess I am one, but I consider ourselves, we are an NFT fund, and like we've been, and when I say NFTs, like for us that means like we are help building out the metaverse. Like NFTs are the exact asset that needed to propel the metaverse into its actual fruition and formation. But yeah, I think it's really advantageous to have a fund fully focused on the NFT assets themselves, because it makes us force participants in the markets and using all the same tools, products, platforms, protocols, etc., that everyone else is using. Versus like, I think that there are certain investors that they don't have as clear of a view because they're not in it every day, right? So if you're like only investing in companies and putting checks here and there, it's like, okay, well, what are the pain points? Like, what are people like? What are the actual issues? And if you're like trying to, buy, sell, trade, etc., like, and you're having issues, you're like, okay, cool. I hope someone makes this, because when they do, I'm going to be a big user or whatnot. So, that's what we do. In terms of, are we surviving the bear market? Yes, we're super fortunate. We are surviving. We're still here, and we're actually we're expanding. So very very happy with that.
Oh, nice! Congrats. Okay, that's awesome. That's great to hear. Okay, we've come to the end of the show, and Andrew, we do something very special at the end of every show. Is we play a game, and the game is called Would You Rather. Okay, it's a very simple game. I give you two options, and you tell me which one you would rather. Okay.
I've played it.
Well, maybe
are they like as extreme like when you play with your friends, or are these like vanilla?
They're based on what you told me today. They're personal.
Okay.
They're very personal. Like I make it up as you speak.
Cool.
Okay, so first one is really easy. Well, maybe it's really challenging. I'm giving you a new cat. It's an amazing cat, and it will have one of two names. Would you rather your new cat be named Vitalik or Dick Butt?
Vitalik, for sure.
Fuck. I'm hoping you just YOLO into Dick Butt. Okay. Would you rather that in the 2014 crash of crypto, or whatever you described, whatever year it was, you didn't sell all your Bitcoin on the absolute bottom, you still had it now? Or that instead of PFPs, virtual worlds took off the same way PFPs did?
Obviously, I wish I didn't sell. Like, obviously,
I don't know, man. I don't know how much like Decentraland you're holding on to, or like crypto voxels or whatever. I don't know what you got. I don't know what you got in the coffer. Okay, last one. Mark Zuckerberg calls. He's like, Andrew, I'm resigning, or I'm resigning because I suck at making us go into the metaverse, and you're the only person for the job. And there is a 90% chance that you're going to be really good at it. You're going to be fantastic, and Meta is going to become the metaverse, and it'll be like, thank God Andrew took over. That's the guy, and billions are using the metaverse the way they should due to your vision. Or the other scenario you described, Bitcoin and ETH merge into the same chain and currency. Which one would you rather?
Oh man. Okay, well, I think if Bitcoin and Ethereum merged, that would like cause a lot of problems, and I don't think that would be good. So I mean, I guess.
But you don't have to do any work for that one. I mean, you probably have to do work at your, Sfermion, but you being the CEO of Meta would be pretty hard.
Yeah, no, it would be absurdly hard. But I mean, I'm obsessed with what I'm doing now. But at the end of the day, like, our mission statement is to accelerate the emergence of the metaverse. And if you give me the reins of Facebook or Meta, and I'm able to, help guide a billion plus people into the metaverse that, in the way that I think a lot of us think it should be created, that's like amazing, right? Like that's incredible. We could really, educate a lot of people and solve a lot of problems. So that would be scary, but great.
People would dissect your photos online. You realize that, right? Like we do Zuckerberg. We're like, why is he looking like? Not that you look more human. You look way more human. But you know what I mean. People would break you down in extreme ways.
Yeah, it would be insane, but it would also be fun. So I would do it.
Andrew for president, man. Let's do it. Andrew for president of Meta. That's what we need. The new campaign. Andrew, brother, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And that is going to do it for us today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed that interview with Andrew. happy Labor Day if it's Labor Day for you. If not, have yourself a wonderful first week of September. We'll see you next week on The First Minute.